We have to break trends down into a couple of different categories, I think. There's obviously technology trends. Technology trends, anybody who's been paying attention or even has just been out of a coma for the last 3 years knows that AI is a pretty big trend in the market. However, I think a lot of companies are waking up to the realities of AI. A lot of companies, get to grandiose ideas and, it's great to dream, it's great to have ideas, but once you start implementing them, you start kind of hitting up against the walls of reality as far as what an LLM is, what the generative AI things actually do.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. Michael from Coderio. And we'll be diving today into his story a little bit, as well as what it is his company does. And then, as always, some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure to stick around for this one. But without further ado, Michael, welcome.
Hey, great, happy to be here. I hope we'll have a good conversation, dive in, and if anybody, wants to listen all the way through on this, hopefully they find something out of it that works for them too. So,
Excellent. I'm sure they will. The Michael, if you don't mind, if we can kick things off, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a bit of background, quick snippet or two of your story.
yeah, so I am originally from Dayton, Ohio. So, name's Michael. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. I have been living in Buenos Aires, Argentina for almost 17 years now.
Oh wow.
Kind of got down here somewhat serendipitously through a study abroad in university and liked it. Felt like I just need to spend more time here and thought, hey, I'm young and dumb. Let's take a risk and see what happens. And so here we are, 17 years later, and it's going well. I've got a lovely family. I've got four dachshunds that are not at the house right now. Otherwise, we would not be able to have this conversation. Um, and then, yeah, enjoy studying, enjoy cooking, enjoy doing all kinds of stuff like that. I've been working in tech since about 2010, give or take. So I've been in this game for a while now.
Excellent. Tell me, how did you get into this business sector? I mean, what was it that like
Yeah.
gave that
So
initial that spark, right? That made you so
yes, I
passionate
mean,
about this.
a lot of my story, I think, is about just kind of getting out of your own way and kind of letting life take you where you're supposed to go and being open to that stuff kind of happening and flourishing. I mean, when I came down here as a study abroad, one of the things that really resonated with me was a social psychology class that I took at the university, and it just
Yeah.
clicked. It seemed natural. It was just something I understood. So
Mm.
when I decided to stay down here, I actually switched from, philosophy and languages, what I was doing in the States. I switched over to psychology down here in Argentina,
Yeah.
um, and started really studying that and going through the associates program down here they have. At the time, I was teaching English through the University of Buenos Aires. They have a language lab down here, and being a native English speaker, obviously, that's a benefit to them to have me come
Yeah.
in and be able to teach English.
Definitely.
One of my students was the VP of HR at a software factory, and he was about to branch out and open up his own recruiting firm. And he knew that I didn't have any interest in being a clinical psychologist. I don't tend to have the patience nor the disposition to function well in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
My general response to everything is life ain't fair. Get used to it.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
maybe a good idea then, right? Not to go
yeah,
into that.
Exactly, right? So, since he
Oh,
was
I love it.
opening up, he said, "Hey, this is this. It's fairly applicable. Give it a shot if you like it and see what happens." So I dove in, took a risk, started working with him.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't like. I knew nothing about tech at that time, other than how to click a button and type on a keyboard. But
Yeah.
I didn't like doing interviews and not understanding what I was talking about with engineers. So I actually started teaching myself how to code.
Jeez.
Um, yeah, I taught myself Python first, and then I switched over to PHP. Did not like PHP at all.
Yeah.
And then switched over to Ruby. Really liked Ruby, but I'm still pretty conversant with Ruby and Python. Good enough to build like applications and things like that on my end, but by no means something to dedicate my life to.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, there's a reason I'm on the commercial side. That's what I always tell people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of how I got into it, honestly.
My word. Tell me, I mean, you've got quite a colorful background, I must say. The based on your expertise, Michael, what would you say are the current trends that you are currently aware of? What ways the wind's blowing these days? What have you been noticing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we have to we have to break trends down into a couple of different categories. I think there's obviously technology trends. Technology trends, anybody who's, been paying attention or even has just been out of a coma for the last 3 years knows that AI is pretty a pretty big trend in the market. However, I think a lot of companies are waking up to the realities of AI. A lot of companies, get to grandiose ideas, and it's great to dream. It's great to have ideas, but once you start implementing them, you start kind of hitting up against the walls of reality as far as what an LLM is, what the generative AI things actually do, what their
Yeah,
limitations are, and then even more important, the challenge of going from a proof of concept into production. So I think a lot of companies are starting to kind of come up against those kinds of areas. There's still definitely a lot of interest around it. I mean, you can clearly increase what your output capacity is for each unit in the company if you leverage it correctly. It's not a simple thing to do by any means. And to be honest, the companies that have built a competitive advantage in terms of cash on hand, a moat there, are the ones that are able to reinvest the most into these technologies right now. And so they're also creating a much larger kind of gap. So the difference between small and large companies and the playing field they're able to compete at, and even just their cost structures is going to get even more pronounced, as a result of this. I think Web3 is coming back up, and I don't mean that in
yeah,
the sense of just crypto coins.
yeah.
Um, I think we had plenty of crypto coins and crypto mania. There's probably going to be something else that comes out of that, but I think that we're really getting more into that concept of decentralized finance, potentially as that links with open finance and open banking, to really kind of bring together a global financial market as the world is more global today. People are more global. There are digital nomads, all kinds of things there. And so moving money around and having a clear framework to help apply that, I think, is a big part of it as well. I think those are probably the biggest technology trends that you're going to see. I think the biggest business trends right now are, people have been reeling, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years with, the reality that we've had almost 14 years of free money and uninterrupted growth. And it just seemed
Mm,
like everything was just going to go up exponentially. And then you had a lot of people who spent their entire professional lives in an upswing in easy markets and never had to deal with a difficult market before. So,
yeah,
we've had two
yeah.
or 3 years of,
Of that.
times where money is not cheap, money is not free, and people having to make decisions around that and having to come back a little bit to basics and building business cases around things. And, there's obviously I think perceived risk that comes up with that as well, right? Companies are going to be more prone to really pick and choose where they're going to deploy capital. Not to mention, they can buy bonds, they can buy things like that to increase what what the cash flow is that's going to come off of their financial instruments, and kind of create that kind of moat along the way too. So there's a lot of differences I think that have been happening there. I think that as rates start coming down, we'll start kicking off a more virtuous cycle when that comes around. When money becomes cheap, then people start looking at alternative vehicles. Generally, it starts coming down to your LPs and your GPs,
Yeah.
in the VC space, and that really starts ticking the motor and going that way. Once rates become low enough, then you might see companies getting more into, financing large, ambitious projects with debt instead of using cash on hand to do things. So I think that really kicks off a cycle of things, but it's slow to get started and then it builds and builds and builds.
So I mean, I think this is maybe a good time that you explain to the listeners what is it that your company does.
Yes. Well, other than apparently, hire and deal with people of very odd backgrounds like myself. Um,
Yeah.
so we are a software solutions company.
All right.
We primarily focus on Latin American engineers. We have grown historically out of Latin America itself, working with some of the largest organizations, largest multinationals in Latin America. And over the last year, we've really made it our strategic path to grow, expand, and offer our services into the U.S. market even more. So, helping those kinds of companies that are looking for a way to quickly and flexibly scale their engineering teams with talent that's in their time zone, that has strong English skills with them, and we're able to really work with a companies that's not just an AR or an HR company, but that is actually a technology company at its heart, right? There's a lot of things that we can help with to really make life go easier and make life go, much smoother, I think, for our clients.
Well, already I'm picking up on a couple of good value points there, but just out of your perspective, what significant value would you say that your business provide other businesses with, just out of your own words? And then secondly, I don't know if you maybe want to tie that up. If you got an example of, where your business has made such a good value difference to another company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name the client or anything like that, just
Yeah,
out of
that's
I haven't spoken with
that
them
might
about
place me in a difficult position. So
Yeah,
please go.
exactly.
Company X.
Um, exactly. Company X. So I mean, as far as the pillars from our end, I think speed, scale, quality. Really, if I had to distill it down to something pithy, it's definitely that.
Yeah,
Um, because of who we are in our DNA, I think one of the things that companies experience with us, it's generally new for them. It generally is something where it does take some explaining and walking through and making sure everybody feels comfortable. But
yeah,
we actually don't do interviews with our clients. We directly assign engineers, and then what we do is we shift around the incentive structure, right? Because since we just directly assign the engineers, if that engineer isn't a fit, like in the first 2 weeks, first month, we don't get the
yeah.
bill that, and we have to replace them,
All
right?
right.
And so we just offload all that onto our side. So it really shifts things around to get to, better results faster and able to do that at scale. So we're not talking about just like one or two people. We have multiple clients where we have 30, 40 people with as well. We're about 300 engineers total in the company. There's a very long tail of, smaller organizations as well that we work with. But,
Sure.
it's definitely something I think that once companies see it and they work with it, they get it, which is really nice. As far as example, Company X, fintech company, that has historically, really been a company that always did things on site, actually, like in person on site in their offices. Like they wouldn't even do remote working or anything like that outside of code, of course.
Yeah,
Um, and we started talking with them and walking them through what our value prop is. And I mean, we have entities and we operate across all Latin America. So in order to get the relationship started, we were able to do things on site with them, but we kept highlighting, look, if you guys are really looking to scale, you have to be able to take advantage of really what our competitive advantage is, which is the whole entirety of Latin America, right? You're going to be able to build a certain team of a certain quality at a certain speed if you're only looking at this area. If you're only looking at Mexico City, you're going to be able to build an entirely different level of quality if you're looking at everywhere in here, right? And so
got
we
it.
were able to do so well with the on-site team that we actually were able to get, buy-in from their CTO, their execs, and everything to actually start working remote now. So now we actually have remote teams that are working with them. We're helping them to build that there as well. There's some learning curves that we're helping them through with that as far as helping with best practices, because obviously, right, it's not just a who is working where, it's also a how work gets
Yeah,
done between the teams.
yeah.
So we've got
Good
a lot
point
of
you're
best
making.
practices. Our CTO, our COO, their team is really working together with their CTO to help bring those things together and make it go smoothly. But it's been phenomenal. I think that's a great success story that we've been able to do.
Yeah, that's a good story, man. Tell me if we can maybe, I want your opinion on just looking at business in general. In your opinion, I mean, you've been around the block. What type of mindset would you say is needed to be a successful founder of a company?
I think you've got to be a little bit, damaged in the head, to be perfectly honest. It probably
I
helps to
wanted
be deprived as
I
a
wanted to
child.
say nuts. I wanted to say
Yeah.
everybody needs to be a bit nuts. But yeah,
I mean, oxygen deprivation is definitely recommended, especially in formational years. Um, But no, I think you have to be driven. It sounds cliche, but I think that Napoleon Hill actually has it right in Think and Grow Rich. I mean, you have to have something that you are able to get all in 100% behind and drive it through there. You have to be able to have a burn the ships mentality, get off, go and make it happen kind of mentality. If you have a if you have a plan B, then you're not really all in on what you're doing. And if you're not really all in on what you're doing, then you're
Yeah,
probably doing yourself a disservice. Now that doesn't mean that you can't, start a side hustle and do your product market fit, your exploration, those kinds of things while having a day job and doing those kinds of things on the side. But once you make that decision, you've got to make the decision. You've got to cut over and you've got to be all in. Make it or break it kind of scenario. I think having that fear of failure behind you is motivating actually, right? That junkyard dog running behind you. I think that's definitely a very big piece that you've got to have. And what's crazy is you have to be able to then complement that with still having the wherewithal, I think, to empathize with your team and be able to build a team that you can get high trust in as well, because you're not going to be able to do everything on your own.
yeah,
Inevitably, you're going to
definitely.
have to trust, you're going to have to build that cohesion, and you're all going to have to work together towards that. So, you know, everybody, anybody can be an entrepreneur. That doesn't mean that it's for everyone, though. Just to be very
Yeah,
blunt.
yeah. Good point. There's a couple of excellent, excellent golden nuggets that you've thrown this way now, man. But let's not stop there. If obviously there's going to be a couple of newbies to the market wanting to enter this kind of space.
Mhm.
Is there maybe one or two things that you've learned along the way that you are willing to share that you would say, hey man, this is what happened on my side and things that you ought to know before you get into this market?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, you know, the proof's always in the pudding with your clients. And I would honestly say that one of the biggest things that I think that I learned from early, if I were to go back and look at myself just starting, what would be the advice? I would say, hey, you need to spend more time and pay more attention to this.
Yeah,
I would actually say contract structures. I think that you really have to be conscious of what you're putting in there, how you're
that's
putting it
really
in there,
interesting.
why you're putting it in there.
Yes.
Um, I mean, it's worth the upfront investment to make sure that everybody's clear, aligned, and explicit on what's getting done. It saves a lot of headaches down the road, and ultimately, it's really going to help you figure out who is the right fit for you. And I think the second thing that I would say is, when you're just starting out, obviously, we all want revenue. We all want to, pay the bills, keep the lights on, et cetera.
Yeah.
This is a market that grows faster. This is a market that has an aggregate demand of about 4% per year growth rate. The human population has an aggregate demand growth rate of about 1%. There's going to be no short of opportunities in this space, in this market itself. Be diligent about identifying fit with your customers, because especially when you are just starting, you need to have customers that are a fit culturally with you. Otherwise, you're going to bring in customers that are going to drain a lot of your other time that you need to be dedicating to other areas to make the business grow, just to be
Yeah.
able to address them when they're actually potentially customers that you maybe felt in your gut. I don't know about this. I think there's a risk something doesn't feel right. And it's going to be different for everybody, where that falls. But I think those would be two big things I would definitely say. They're somewhat counterintuitive, but it makes sense as far as being efficient with resource allocation and helping you get on a solid growth path after that. Those would definitely be two things I'd tell people.
That's good advice, Michael. Tell me, where can the listeners, where can they get hold of you guys?
Yeah, so they can check us out at www.coderio.co. That's www.coderio.co. We got all kinds of information, case studies, anything there. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to always have conversations with people. And we are physically in the Miami area in the US. So, we're always looking to meet with people and take people out. Every now and then we've been known to get, suites at a Heat game and bring people out as well. So, hey, always happy to have fun.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on. You've provided Such good insight today. I know I learned a thing or two, definitely. I made my own little notes, and I don't usually do that. Had a lot of fun having you on, man. All the best to you and your business. I can fully understand why you're so successful. You guys bring a great value to the table. So, hey, man, thanks for hopping on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Trey.
All the best.